Okay, hello. So I'm going to do a bit of work now. This might take a while on um, an unseen extract, and then I'm going to do a little bit of work on a question from study fiction. So this extract, it is, I think, always useful to look at mock papers. People who put them together are students of the exam. They're brilliant, and they're looking at the previous year's mock exams is usually a good bit of preparation for this year's exam and for this year's mock exams and this year's exam. So this is the one of the mocks that went around last year, 2024. The first question was um, on this text, which was a mixture of a written and a visual text. Don't forget, as I already said, I've been through this, but I'll go through it again. As I already said, you've got to think about the meaning and the wording of questions, how many marks questions worth. So here's question 1A. What message do you think the text printed on pages 3 to 4 conveys to the reader? So it's asking you to think about, you know, you to think. There's no wrong answer, but what you think the message is. So it's 25 marks, but that's part A. There's also a part B. What impact does the author's use of images and color in the text make on you? And then there's a part C. The text printed on pages 3 to 4 is an extract from a graphic story called Melody. Based on what you have read, suggest a different title for this story. Give a reason for your answer. So, it's guesswork when you're in the exam. There's no point in me showing you a marking scheme here because you're in the exam. You don't really know, okay, well, there's 25 marks. What's the allocation? But for me, like I look at the amount of space provided for that last question. That's clearly a one paragraph, and look at the question itself. That's clearly a one paragraph answer. So for 5 marks, so I'm going to write one paragraph there. Just make sure I'm on the right color. Okay. And then the first question, which is very, very, very straightforward. You just have to think, read the piece and say, what message do you think? Now it says message. I would advise you to write 2 paragraphs here. See that? That's a 2. My terrible handwriting. I'll get I'll redo that. That's better. 2 paragraphs for, I would say, 10 mark allocation for that question because it's very, very easy. So if they ask you for a message, are you allowed to talk about 2 messages? Of course you are. And then the next, oh, sorry. Why is that doing that? Yeah, there we go. The next question, which was trickier, where you had to talk about the impact of images and color. And don't forget, that is something you absolutely could be asked about um, in the real junior cycle, the combinations of media in a text, visual as well as the written text. That was a trickier question. And for me, I would think that if you're going to, pick up vital marks, at least one paragraph on that one. 2 would be nice, but very few people get 2 out of it. So at least 2 paragraphs for part A. I'd allocate that 10 marks. The second question, at least one paragraph minimum. I would allocate that 10 marks. You might get 6 or 7 of those 10 marks if you write one paragraph, you're picking up marks along, and then 5 for the third one. Okay, so that was the way I structured this. Now, let's have a quick look at the passage. So, as I say, it's a piece of, it's a poem, but it's not kind of traditional poem, and it's married to the visual text. So I'm going to read it really quickly, and then we're going to talk about the writing answers to the questions. So we're looking for the message of the poem, and then we think about the alternative title, and we think about the use of images and color after we've done that answer. So what's the message? It was a normal morning. I'm a composer. It's a job. Believe it or not, I'm meant to be working on a score, but I wasn't doing anything until I had more coffee inside me. I'll actually make that nice and big there so you can read it yourself. And did the morning scroll, on your phone. A friend had posted. She lived on the other side of the world. I did the strangest thing. I paid attention. I hadn't seen her for ages. It's hard to believe we all look up at the same sky. She'd shared some lyrics she'd written. They were heartfelt, lonely, wanting. She hadn't posted the actual score. I had no idea. Oh, sorry. I had no idea how the song goes. I had to use my imagination. And then we go on to the second part where color comes in. I tried thinking of distant people and how we connect, and well, using your imagination is an act of seeing. And in that moment, I started to see more. And a train of thought provoked by a distant friend, an unheard melody reached an unexpected destination. And you have this second page where you have this kind of linking of visual and the visual images and the written word. I saw notes. No note played in the same space. This alone is it not sorry, no note played in the same space is alone. They interact. That's what melody is. I thought of the world as melody. And if there's a connected melody and the world is an orchestra playing it, it means other things. Notes can be discordant. You might not know what that means. It means that they're not harmonious. A single note can harm that harmony. And we can all question what power we truly have. But at the least, you have the power to not play discordant notes and encourage others to do likewise. Now, again, the last part, because the melody is a beautiful thing and it'd be a tragedy to lose it, I decided I'd try to sing in tune with the melody. I'd find the best place for me to play in this orchestra. That was it. Nothing dramatic, nothing super heroic, just the decision. I decided and I did. Not an easy passage for junior cycle students. I think it's quite difficult. So anyway, I won't dwell on it. Think about messages. Now remember the question said, what message do you think? And remember, I'm always talking about this thing, FOSS, and how I disapprove of it. And it's banned in my classes. So FOSS means fear of sounding stupid. Often students will be reluctant to make contributions, or will think, oh, I can't write that, that's stupid. When what they're writing might be original, it might be interesting. Just try to remember, as an English student, you're not expected to get the right answer. You're expected to write an interesting answer. Now, it has to be relevant and purposeful, so it has to be based on the question. It has to be evidence-based, so your response has to use reference to, in this case, the text in support of the point you're making. But whatever the message you think it is, if you can deliver that in a cogent and direct way, you're going to score. So there are 4 options I came up with in a little class I was doing last week, an unrecorded class. That's why this is all marked up. And the first message was about technology. In the first page, the writer described how she's the morning scroll and how she's a composer, but she wasn't doing her work. And student suggested that, well, maybe that means that the message could be about technology and how it has a detrimental effect on us, how we can find it distracting and we can lose motivation, not doing what we're meant to be doing because we're so distracted by technology. I thought that was an excellent point, and I'm going to write a paragraph on that in a second. The second message, the world can be a lonely place, but we are all connected. Okay, so she's sitting on the phone. Her friend, who's living on the other side of the world, sends her a message. The friend is feeling lonely, but that makes the poet think about the friend and then think about the idea that we're all playing different notes, and when the notes come together, we create a melody. So maybe the message is about how technology can keep us connected to each other. So a positive message about technology and a negative message about technology. Would those be 2 valid points? I think they would, and they're excellent points. The third point that came up in that discussion with students was about the pieces about music, and the pieces about how the image or the motif. A motif is a repeated image that the writer uses is related to music and melody and harmony and notes, and maybe the idea that music is something that unites us. So I could be sitting in Dublin and somebody else could be sitting in Rio de Janeiro or in New Delhi and listening to the same piece of music, and we're all connected by that. That's a valid point as well. See, just coming up at various different points. I thought that the last point was a good one as well. That the message is to be spontaneous, to decisive, to act on impulse. In other words, at the very end of the passage, the can or sorry, the narrator says, nothing dramatic, nothing super heroic, just a decision. I decided and I did. So this is a really good example of, like, I could have, you know, 50 kids in front of me, students in front of me, and I could say, okay, in silence, having read that for the first time, write down a message from the poem, and you could have 50 different answers, and that's, I'll say it one last time, that's okay. It's okay to have different answers. It's okay if you come out of an exam and you chat to your pal and you've written, an answer that's different from what your pal wrote. You're not a tick. You're not wrong. You're not stupid. It's how you deliver your answer that you're being judged on. So remember, in English, often it's not what you say, but how you say it within, certain limits. Now, what I'm doing here now is I have a file pad here. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to write down a couple of lines on my file pad. And I'll explain why I'm doing that as I do it, okay? So I've just written down, I decided and I did, okay? Now I'm going to write down, sorry, I was moving the wrong thing. I'm going to write down the fact that the writer has written the word melody, I think it's actually 6 times in the passage. I'm going to, mark or write down the words. I tried thinking of distant people and how we connect. And what I'm doing here is recording the information that I am going to use to write my answers. And what I'm trying to, I suppose, get into your head is, before you write, think carefully about the evidence you're going to use before you write. And I know that you're going to say, Paul, time management is a nightmare. But like, I'm writing down 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to write a 5th and a 6th quote. I'm meant to be working on a score. And then little ellipsis, dot, dot, dot. And the morning scroll. And then the last one then, I hadn't seen her for ages. It's hard to believe we all look up at the same sky. So what I'm doing is, I'm preparing my answer by having my ideas written in rough work. And the reason I'm doing that in front of you is because I do believe it's so important in the exam to use these boxes and to write your notes down, like briefly, or your quotes down. And that way you're not having to keep on flicking back. You know, oh, what was that quote again? Go back again, or you're not going to forget to use the quote. And don't forget, I've written down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things there, but in the exam you only need 1 or 2, because you're not going to write more than 2 paragraphs for this answer. Okay, so it's a way of speeding up, not slowing down, writing the quotes down. Okay, so the question is, I'm just going to grab the question here now. Second. So go like that and do this. Just give me 1 second, sorry. This is the great thing about recording things. I don't have to get panicky if I don't get it all straight away. I'm not great with technology, as I'm sure you can see. So I'll copy that part anyway. And what I'm going to do is write a sample. Response. Get rid of that. And That's perfect. Okay, so now I can write my answer. And I'm going to write my answer and I'm going to use the Rice rules to guide me. And if you've watched any of the other video content, you'll know what I mean by that, but I'm going to explain it again now. So when I think about the Rice rules, I'm going to try and make sure that every paragraph I write is built around a relevant topic sentence. Doesn't have to be the first sentence, but often it will. That's what the or stands for. It's going to be informed by or supported by, or my point is going to be validated by supporting information from the text or reference, quotation. I'm going to write as clearly as I can, focusing most importantly on my punctuation so that my sentences make sense. And I'm going to try to find the time to explain the connection between my point and my evidence and the question. I'll do this really, really quickly, okay? Really quickly. So here we go. Will I be able to change the font on this? This is Pages, and I don't really like Pages as a font, or sorry, to work inside it, but I'm going to try and use it. So I'm going to use this because it's almost mimicking handwriting. So what message do you think the printed pages on the text printed on pages 3 to 4 conveys to the reader? And we know that message is the key word in the question. So it's asking, do you think? You don't have to say I think. In fact, I would often think that those words are completely unnecessary. If you write it down, it's what you think. Okay? So yeah. So that sentence is setting the examiner up for, okay, you're on message. Okay, you're on message. I'm just going to make that bold. But you're not going to limit yourself. It's going to stop that noise when I type. I'll show it to you here, my little keyboard, and it sits on my wooden desk, and sometimes it makes a bit of a clatter when I'm typing. We don't want that. So the printed text contains more than one message, and then just pick one, the random one. So I'll go with the last quote, the first quote I wrote down, which is from the last line of the poem. Okay. And then I don't have to flick back because I have it written down here beside me. Now, this is not brilliant, but it's for junior cycle, higher level, it's a very good, strong answer. Now, I'm just going to pinch that for a second so you can see the whole thing I've written. Let's have a quick count of the amount of words that are in that. Sorry, no. So that is coming in at 81 words. If you think about that, most of you will write somewhere around 8 to 10 words per line. So that's it's a good 10 line, 8 to 10. Oh, sorry. 8 to 10 line answer. And again, I could read that tomorrow, what I've written, and go, oh, I don't know about that. It's not, don't think that's great. But you can't be perfect, especially when you're writing against the clock. What you have to be is question facing. So we have message there, and then we have, this idea came up from a student in the class I was doing last week. Seems to be suggesting it is important to be spontaneous. That's a great use of vocabulary. Any examiner is going to be happy with that use of vocabulary. Then you've got your quote, I decided and I did. And now you've got your explanation. So you've got your point. That's your, in the right, look, every teacher's, whether it's PIE or PEQ or whatever the hell, every teacher has their own version of it. Mine is the Rice, every English teacher, sorry. My version of it is the Rice rules, because I just like the idea. The students will, okay, I'm going to make sure everything I say is relevant, so don't wander off the point. Make sure I back everything up with information because it has to be substantiated, right, as clearly as I can, and then explain my points. And then if I do that, I'm going to score. I might not score top grades, but I'm going to score. So the printed text on page 3 to 4 contains more than one message. That's your kind of opening sentence. No need for an opening paragraph here. And then you go straight in. For example, the writer seems to be suggesting that it is important to be spontaneous. The final line of the poem is, I decided and I did. Great quote. And so you have your point, relevant point, you have your information or I, and now you have your explanation. This very clearly conveys the writer's focus on and determination to be active and to respond to the ideas she has. She wants to look for the melody in the world and to harmonize with the world, and she is going to do that. If I was marking that and I was an examiner, I'd go, you know what? It's very good. It's not perfect by any means, and but it's really well focused. There's no mistakes. It's evidence based. It's relevant to the question. Student maybe could have done a bit of a better job explaining the point, but it's still a very good point. Okay, so that's the key. No fuss. Fuss is banned. We're not going to be afraid of sounding stupid. If you come up with a point and you can see a quote and you can explain why it's relevant to the question, write the point. Second paragraph then. Which one will I go for? We'll go for the one about technology. Okay. I'll just make sure that that's not Volta. Okay, so there's a good point. Technology can be both positive and negative influence, and then give your references. So okay, so that's a good point. Let's have a read of that. The message seems to be that technology can be both a positive and negative influence. The writer says, I am a composer. I am meant to be working on a score, but she is distracted by the morning scroll. So I'm just noticed something there, a little error there. Sorry, I'm always doing that. Back there and do it like that. Yes. Back 1, 2, like that. And there. There we go. So a little follow up there. And this is a word that the student, one of the students used last week when we were going through. It was an excellent use of vocabulary. And now that's on its own, that's a really good paragraph. But if you wanted to add a paragraph into that, sorry, if you want to add a little bit more depth to go push for those top grades, get another little bit, and it could be, sorry, oh yeah, I try thinking of distant people and how we connect. Okay. So there you go. Maybe it's a bit long for a a 5 mark paragraph. It is 118 words, not massively long. Again, the very best student. I had a guy last year who got the distinction, the holy grail. And again, I wouldn't be thinking too much about distinctions now if I was you. They're so difficult. They're deliberately very difficult to get. I didn't mean to do that. I did that a minute ago, didn't I? Oh, I'm an awful twit. I don't know what a weird is. Um, there we go. That's what I wanted to do there. So this guy that I had last year, he's just an exceptional student, and he wasn't. He'd tell you now if I'd love to get him to chat to you, but I might ask him actually to sit down with me one day and do a little conversation, record it, and put it up. But like he would never class himself as the best writer in the world, and he was constantly writing, practice, 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 and he was aware that time management was an issue, and time management was an issue in his mock exams, and he didn't get it. He got a higher merit, but he was nowhere near distinction. But he busted his ass on time management, and he wrote longer, more detailed answers while following the plan, the Rice rules, um, and he banged that distinction out in the end. So it is possible to improve. So that's the first question. The second one, then, I'm just going to continue on with this. I hope you don't. Well, you don't have to watch the video, do you? It's fine, isn't it? The second question, then, I'll just go back now to the document. The second question was on what impact does the author's use of images and color in the text make on you? And it's very interesting that they said images and color. So you could write one paragraph in which you deal with them both, or you could write a paragraph on images and then write a paragraph on color, which is what I'm going to try to do now. Now here, I don't really need quotation. Here I'm going to, I'm going to just talk about what I see and refer to the text without quoting anything, just talking about the images and the different color. The the difference in the color. And what I saw was that the images make the text more engaging. So the marriage of um, the visual with the written text heighten the impact of the text. That's a phrase you can learn if you're going to do that. And it can help communicate the message of the text or the writer more immediately, creating a kind of a cinematic impact. So you're not only reading the story, but you're watching the story like a piece of cinema. So loads to say there, and then there's something to say about the color, which I'll talk about now. So let's have a quick look. We're going to grab this question out. Here's the question. Come on. There we go. Here's the question, and let's write an answer. Again, I'm going to try and follow the Rice rules. Okay, and I'm going to knock out these two paragraphs really, really quickly. Okay. Mm, yeah, I just want to fix this because they'll drive me mad. Yeah, and then go, and there should be no bold now. Okay. Okay, so you're just trying to explain your points. That's all I'm doing here. Look, I'm trying to explain my points again. Let's do a quick count on the word count in that passage. So in that paragraph, so the word count there is coming in at 86 words. Again, that's perfectly reasonable length paragraph. Perfectly reasonable length. Sorry. Okay. So I'm just trying to engage with the question. Again, what I'm saying, I'm not looking for any, international prizes for analysis. I'm just trying to be analytical. I'm trying to think about the questions asking about what impact does it make on you? Well, it heightened the impact of the written words. I thought this was true to it. Like I particularly liked. So there you go. That's the question is asking about impact it made on you. So you're allowed to have that bit of, personal response. The pictures of the birds on the second page. And why did I like them? Well, the fact that they are interspersed, great use of vocabulary, with the written words added a sense of mystery, which in turn made the passage more engaging. That's really good. That's you're trying to explain your point. And then another part. So again, look there, I particularly liked. Now, that's there twice. So maybe on rereading, you go, do you know what? I'm going to get rid of particularly, and I'm going to put also. An examiner loves to see if you draw a line through a word and you put a better word in, or you don't want to be repetitive, that's a sign that you're editing your own work, and that's a sign of a really good writer. I also like the image of the young woman sitting on the park bench. The seat to her left was empty and she looked small and lost. This helped convey a sense of loneliness. So that's a really, really good response. It's thoughtful, it's engaged in the text. I didn't have to look at the text because I've already looked at it and I have the images in my head and off I go. So if you wrote that on its own, I think you'd get 6 or 7 from any examiner. You're not going to be punished for not writing the second paragraph. Like, oh, the maximum score you can get is 5. That's not the case. But if you want to get 10 or, 8, 9 or 10 higher merit, um, distinction, around there, at over 75 is a higher merit, at over 90 is a distinction, then you probably would need a second paragraph added in. So I'm just going to write one here really, really quickly. And then we're going to move to the next part, okay? So this, second paragraph here is on colour. And when you look at the passage, you can see how the first part is kind of all in black and white. Now that word monochrome means black and white. But then she goes, I had to use my imagination, and the picture of the female character, the young woman, she kind of has this look of, she's kind of pleased with herself. And as soon as she starts using her imagination, what comes in? Colour. And they're warm, russets, yellows, gold, oranges, browns, real warmth in the colour. And I think that adds that addition of colour heightens the message. And the message is that if you use your imagination, the world suddenly becomes a much more interesting place. And I think that's a valid point to make. So let's make it. Now, I think that's a decent enough little answer. And again, what I'm trying to do is explain things as a student, and I'm thinking about what does an examiner want. An examiner wants effectively written paragraphs. Examiner wants work which is question facing and on task. Examiner wants to see students, yes, being ambitious in the way they use vocabulary. So using terms like monochrome. So you see where I said colorless, black and white, monochrome. So you can wrote colorless be fine, you wrote black and white be fine, monochrome is better. And then like flooded, the passage was flooded with color. Very good use of language there. Um, the triad, brighter, more interesting, warmer, place. Little error there. Reread your work. Look, I forgot to put my apostrophe in. These little things really matter. Well, look, they don't really matter if you're kind of going, I don't really like English and it's not my bag. You fill yourself with that narrative that you're not very good at it. You're better than you think you are. You just probably haven't got the practice in, or maybe the guidance on how to practice. But what we're looking for is just answers that are, well, any examiner, junior cycle, leaving cert, and can I make it clear, like it's not all about the exam, it's about being better at things. It's about having ambition. It's about having a sense of, self-worth. So if you're going to do something, my attitude is always do your very best at it. And if you're going to do your very best in English, well, then the key thing is that you have a strategy, and that involves making points which are relevant, supported by information. There were no quotes in those two paragraphs, but they're very informed by reference to the passage. Write as clearly as you can, properly punctuating and rereading everything to make sure the punctuation is intact, and try to explain your points. So that's how I would answer that question. Now, I'm going to finish very quickly by going back to the top of the page. Now, what I've got at the top of the page are two quotes from the book The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. Which some of you may be studying, and I know that students of mine are studying, which is why I'm making this video for you, because I've set you work to do. And that work is to answer this question. I'll be really quick now, okay? That work is to answer this question. Not that one, this one here. Choose a novel that you have studied where a character experiences a struggle or conflict with reference to one or more key moments from the novel. Outline the struggle or conflict your chosen character experienced and explain whether, in your opinion, they handled the situation well or not. So that's a question that we're going to look at. Well, you are looking at, because I've given it to you for homework. Those students are in my class. So we'll just get this nicely organized here. Handle the situation okay, that's the first part. That's part A. And again, I'm going to talk about the marks available now in a second. And then part B of that task. I presume you're impressed by the skill which I can flick from document to document. Aren't I amazing? Part B of that task was, how did your chosen characters, sorry, that's it, Paul, come on, response to the struggle or conflict you discussed in part A affect the rest of the novel? So what I'm showing you here is, because you guys, again, talking to my students, have decided that you're going to answer this one on that's what I'm looking for. So that's part B. Sorry, you've looked at both of Mice and Men and The Outsiders. So you've gone for The Outsiders here. That's perfect, no problem at all. That's what I'm looking to do. And so what I'm saying to you is, you're going to write your answers for me for Thursday, okay? Or I prefer to get them before then, so I can correct them and have them back to you. And this is these are the quotes I think you could use in your answer. So it's a 25 mark question. And what I'll be looking for is for this part, I'll be looking for 2 paragraphs. And I'm looking for 2 paragraphs for this part as well. Now, you don't have to use a quote in every paragraph, but it'd be nice. And what I'm just showing you, and you'll see this, you'll have this document, is I've picked out 2 quotes. So the first one is Ponyboy, and he's talking about the attack at the beginning of the book when he's come out of the cinema. And he says, "It occurred to me then that they could kill me. I heard a muttered curse and got slugged again, and they were stuffing a handkerchief in my mouth." So that shows the violence in the world that Ponyboy inhabits. You know, he's a greaser and he's hopped on by the socias and they're bashing him. And then his brother Dally come along. And that's a key moment because it shows conflict and violence. So there's struggle and conflict and what he experiences. Okay? Now, that is the basis for 1 paragraph, I think, in chapter A. Now, you don't have to use it, but I want you to try to use quotation. Then the second quote, and of course you wouldn't use all of it, it's just a small part of it. You know what happens later on is that Ponyboy and Johnny get jumped again going home, crossing the park, and the socials put Ponyboy's head under the water, and then something happens, and this is what happens. Then I saw Johnny. I killed him, he said slowly. I killed that boy. Bob, the handsome Soch, was lying there in the moonlight, doubled up and still. A dark pool was growing from him, spreading slowly over the blue-white cement. I looked at Johnny's hand. He was clutching his switchblade. It was dark to the hilt. My stomach gave a violent jump and my blood turned icy. Now, you certainly wouldn't use all that, but you can certainly use some of it in part B, because we can have, if you want to talk about Ponyboy as your chosen character or Johnny as your chosen character, the first quote certainly works for Johnny because it's Ponyboy showing the world of violence and conflict and struggle that the greasers inhabit. Then you can bring in other examples of that conflict to fill out the first answer. And again, I'm going to write a sample and give it to you when you've given me yours. And then you can use this one to show Johnny desperately, being violent. That's the first paragraph. And then the consequences of that later on, they go to Windrixville and what happens there and how Johnny's story ends. There's loads to write there. Okay, so hopefully that'll help you do that work. So I'm going to end this video now. I hope you found it in some way useful. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not in my class, if you think you'd like me to continue doing videos like this, just give us a thumbs up, because that's your way of communicating to me that you think that you'd like me to do more of this. You might find it useful. Okay, so we finished there.